fight, flight, fight, flight, fight, flight, fight. Hello and welcome to a little exercise where we critique one of these models of psychology that was pushed upon me by a terrible advert. Now, I don't think it's beneficial to name and shame or actually criticize things publicly necessarily. It's not how change is made. It's better to speak to people. But this popped up in an advert and it just seemed a bit ridiculous, and I thought I'm going to anonymize it and we're going to use it as a critique exercise. Now, I've sent it out to you guys on Instagram and lots of you came in and gave me lots of critiques on it, and I'm also going to share my own critique. Some of your critiques here, world class, so well done whoever sent these anonymous critiques in. So the model itself, as we can see, has the comfort zone, the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone. So there's 4 different zones. It's kind of implied that, you know, comfort's bad, growth is good, and you move towards them the way it's laid out. But there was honestly no explanation with this. So I'm also going to tell you, somebody contacted me and say, yeah, Hugh, what's bad about this? Because I actually use that. Isn't that class that somebody's curious about how to get better? So let's see what your critiques are of this model. And yeah, hopefully it'll be a good exercise in critical thinking and improving how to think about psychology. So first critique was everything is contextual and the growth mindset study hasn't replicated well. So we've got this growth zone. This person's jumped into growth mindset, and growth mindset by Carl Dweck essentially talks about how if you've got a mindset that believes that you can improve things and progress is incremental, you're more likely going to be successful. However, yeah, the research didn't really replicate, and even when the research did show up that this was beneficial, the effect size, the amount of improvement in performance, was only about 10%, whereas general education and training in a thing results in about a 60% effect size by comparison in the educational settings where Carl Dweck's work was carried out. So you should do the effective thing, not some fancy, yeah, let's think about the growth mindset. But the biggest issue with the growth mindset is actually you want a reality mindset. You want the mindset that says, look, what's actually possible? How do I do it? Can I go and do it? Not one that says, oh, think positively that you can improve things. Even when, like, you can't, you know, you can think as if you're going to grow wings, but it ain't going to happen. So the next critique was, why fear? Why not anxious, trepidation, or concern? And yeah, this idea of the fear zone makes me think, ooh, yeah, fear is kind of like flight, flight, fright, flight, fight, fight, flight, fight, fight, flight, fight, flight, fight, flight, fight, freeze, flight, or fight. There we go. I got it. So yeah, it's kind of like a fear response is like a big thing that, you know, oh, why fear? Why such an intense thing? And why not a different emotion? And why is it fear that people feel when they learn? They don't really, and there's no evidence to suggest that fear is something that happens when we move outside a comfort zone. You know, it could be curiousness, you know. So yeah, that was easy for me to say. The next critique we had was surely the further away from the comfort zone, the more acute or severe, that's what acute means, the negative emotion, not right next to the zone of comfort. Ooh, interesting. In terms of zones and learning and development, there's actually a psychologist called Lev Vygotsky. I don't know him personally, he might even be dead, but Vygotsky ages ago, maybe in the 70s, came up with the zone of proximal development, kind of like Goldilocks, too much, too little, just right. In his zone of proximal development model, it talks about essentially if the challenge isn't too good or is too easy, they won't be interested or challenged, therefore they won't develop. If it's too hard, they'll be put off and won't put effort in. It has to be just right in this zone of proximal development to get the best adaptation. This is also similarly expressed phenomena known as flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And he wrote the book on flow and obviously did his academic career in that. But the concept of flow talks about whether it's boring or whether it's too challenging, and the state that somebody reaches in terms of their full engagement within that or absorption. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of a linear model, isn't it? And it doesn't really fit because most human functions aren't linear. They could be exponential or bell curved. Linear is actually a poor way of thinking about anything in human performance. So great critique. This next critique, banging, world class. Comfort is subjective, no defining standards of what comfort is. It's dangerous to start comparing with others, and comfort is not always safe, e.g. abusive relationships. Comfort equals shit old habits, complacency. Control is an illusion that people need to get past, but comfort sometimes makes life easier in order for you to tackle challenges in another part of your life. You might need to succeed to boost morale, motivation, then push yourself and grow, but no risk, no reward. You could make comfort zone bigger by pushing yourself out of it. So actually this talks about how your comfort zone expands as your ability expands. You become more comfortable in more difficult situations, but then also the fact that we might need to be comfortable in our physical lives, in our training and exercise when we're under work stress. And that actually lines up with Hans Selye's general adaptation syndrome of lots of stress, lots of recovery, and the stress provides the stimulus for growth. So you need this recovery period. So it's not a model that you move there and stay there. It's a model of back and forward as part of the process of growth and adaptation. Then the next critique talks about how the picture implies that stages are discrete, suggestion that you can't experience any of the elements until you're at that stage. And actually all the little descriptors are things that could be experienced or delivered on their own without actually being in the other stages or combined with the other areas. So it also suggests that you can't jump from stage 1 to stage 3, that you have to move through them. And again, there doesn't appear to be any evidence for that. So yeah, do you have to have all these elements before you move on to another stage? No, you could just jump straight into growth. Why do you need to jump into, Jesus, what the hell is growth anyway? Define that. Now, you can set goals even when you're in your comfort zone. This is correct. Another great critique. Just saying that you've got goals to set isn't really in a specific zone doesn't help. You can set goals anywhere. Now, another critique that we had coming in was large grey areas not being taken into account. Staying in certain zones can be necessary for individuals that might have had negative or harmful experiences. Let's think a bit deeper about this. I kind of get where you're coming from, and it might be related to the previous post of like comfort in some areas of our lives might be beneficial to allow us to push in other areas. Kind of like a give more here, pull back some there type approach. But actually this idea just needs a bit of clarity, because if we're saying that staying in certain zones might be necessary for people who've had negative experiences, well actually no. When you've had a difficult experience, say if you're scared of something, you've had a failure, it's best to push into that. And the research shows this through psychological techniques within therapy, such as exposure therapy or flooding, which are used to expose people to experiences they find difficult or distressing so that they become desensitized and adapt to them in order that they improve. So yeah, there's a little bit in this that needs parsed out, but I think it's worth considering that maybe we need to push on at times whenever there are difficulties, as opposed to saying that comfort is always good, and that if you had something wrong to you, you should stay in the had something done to you or experienced something that's negative, that you should stay in your comfort zone because you're a fragile little soul. You're not a fragile little soul. You're just a human being that's put here to essentially die of something. So get on with it and push on. Now, last critique coming in was the comfort zone serves as a key function in maintaining our health and well-being. Returning to it allows us to recover and recharge, similar with people that talk about being comfortable with being uncomfortable, as if being uncomfortable is a bad thing. I reckon it might be as important as discomfort. So again, this harks back to this idea of, it's a model of back and forth, not be in this zone. And actually, again, the research of Hans Selye and general adaptation syndrome would support this, The other thing that's important is that people need confidence, not fear, to move past things. We don't do things because we're fearful. We do them when we're confident. You should really be moving from if you were going to call it something, a zone of comfort to a zone of confidence under pressure, and then moving forward into learning from that. And it's maybe more of a cycle. But anyway, somebody's put this model together because it's easy, it makes us feel good. It goes, oh yeah, on first glance this makes sense. Actually, pretty much useless and bullshit. But here's my big critique. This is the kind of stuff that people go and put together, and they go, look, you're in the comfort zone, and you could push past that fear and get into the learning zone and the growth zone. Isn't that great? But actually, people can use this to bully people, to force them into doing things. And I can see this being used in business environments by somebody saying, oh, you're not doing that because you're fearful, push past the fear. Now, that's bullshit. Actually, maybe if somebody's fearful of something, you should go, do you know what? Let's explore why that is, and give them the power to do it. Because whenever you're in a state of fear, it's important to respect that and actually look at it from the point of view of giving that person the power to deal with and cope with that, as opposed to push or force or bully them into experiencing more fear. That's not what the previous techniques I mentioned of flooding or exposure therapy do. That's actually bullying if you push people into a fearful position without their consent. Those techniques rely on the consent and support and development and encouragement of the person to get to that point at their own pace. Now, here's the thing. There's also Sackett's model of evidence-based practice, which I could bring into this, which talks about, are you actually competent to help somebody through something? Because just because you have a model and the evidence-based shows something doesn't mean that you have the ability to deliver it. I talk more about that in my critical thinking course, which is also on my YouTube. You can go and look at that. It's free for the moment. But I've actually launched a course with Shannon Beer. Places are limited to that. And we talk about how critical thinking is important for all practitioners trying to help people's performance. And we also talk about how conversation and communication are vital, as well as managing yourself. Because you know what? I might have a great message, but if I deliver it in a weak and timid way and I'm anxious about how I communicate, it's not going to come across well. So you need to understand things critically. You need to be able to communicate clearly. And you also need to manage yourself in a conversation or in a message so that you come across well. So we talk about this in our course, and you can go and check that out in the link below. Thanks. Keep in touch.